All right, well, welcome everybody to the Fast Start class for the T4i, also known as the 650D in other parts of the world. This class is designed to be for anybody who has this camera who really wants to get in and learn it and doesn't really enjoy reading the instruction manual, which I don't know too many people who enjoy doing that. Just follow along with the class, download the PDF because this will be a good place to take notes. It's got other settings and other recommended things to look at on the camera and how to set them. So that goes along with the class as well. I was mentioning just before the show, I was out last night, got a chance to take the camera out and was shooting some nighttime stuff in downtown Seattle with it. And really makes me upset because I really don't need another camera right now, but if I did, this would make a nice little lightweight camera. It was just so lightweight. I use one of the larger higher-end Canon cameras, but this one is just so small and lightweight you could throw it in a really small pack in there. There was a couple of things that kind of frustrated me, and I figured out some settings to kind of get around it. And so to get the smoothest operation, got to hang with me till we get to the menu system, because I think this is a great class to take for anyone who has just purchased the camera and wants to go through the menu system and get the camera totally set up for the way that they shoot. And we will get to that. We have all things in due course. So let me kind of explain what we're going to be doing here today. Let me make sure my clicker is working, which it isn't. There we go. Okay. Kind of give you an idea of what the class is going to be like today. I want to start off with just a little product overview. We got some new people who are brand new to the Canon system, so I want to let them know what they're getting themselves in for. We're going to talk about some photography basics because chances are there's some people who have purchased this camera that are brand new to kind of serious photography, you might say. And then we're going to go through the camera, talk about all the different buttons and what everything does on the outside. We will take a little break. For those of you watching live, we're going to take a little lunch break. We'll come back and we're going to go into the display and the menu system and get your camera fully set up. And then at the end of the class, we're going to kind of review the most important functions and set the camera up using different operations and ideas on how you would use the camera out in the real world. All right. So to start with, when you get this camera, you get this gigantic instruction manual. And I don't know too many people who like going through these things. I know I go through them more than most people. I don't like going through them, but I kind of have to really learn these cameras. And you could easily spend, this is the largest instruction manual I've seen for a camera at this price level. So you could spend more than 12 hours going through this instruction manual. And there is some things in there that I'm not going to talk about. The camera is partially designed for people who don't have computers. And there's a lot of things that you can do in camera that are very similar to working in Photoshop, and I'm not going to go into those specific features. My idea on how to set a camera up is I want to get the cleanest, straightest, best image possible out of the camera. So that's the way I'm trying to set my camera up. I'm not trying to play games and create all types of crazy photographs in camera. There are some possibilities, and I will talk about those very briefly. The idea on this is that this is not a photography 101 class. If you said, oh great, here's a class on how to use a camera. I'm going to learn all about depth of field and what shutter speeds to use and how to download images on my memory card. No, that's not what this class is about. This class is about learning this specific camera. We will talk about some photography basics, but if you do want to learn more photography, if you haven't taken a general photography class, I would highly recommend it. There's one that I might recommend more than others, but we'll get to that when we get there. Okay, so let's start with a little product overview of what we are getting ourselves into. So welcome to the Canon family if this is your first Canon camera. Okay, I think I'm just going to switch from the remote to the keyboard. There we go. That seems to be a little bit more directly connected. So Canon has been around for quite some time, and their original name was Kawanon. And there was an optical company in Japan. It actually started out in an apartment. We have garage companies here in the United States sometimes. In Tokyo, they start off in little apartments. And what's kind of funny is I found the original logo, which is this Buddhist goddess of mercy. And if you look at all those arms, I think they were predicting in the future how many buttons would be on a futuristic Canon camera, and you would need this many arms to control a camera. But luckily they have kind of gone away from that symbol quite some time ago. So they started off making little rangefinder cameras. In 1959, they came out with their first interchangeable lens, SLR, single lens reflex. We'll talk about that in a moment. 1971, they started getting a little bit more serious, producing professional cameras. And a notable change came in 1987 because they changed their lens mount. And so if you want to use lenses from the pre-1987 era, technically there are some adapters, but I would not recommend it on this camera. So if you go to a garage sale or you're searching the internet for old Canon lenses, just be aware that anything pre-1987 is not going to work very smoothly on this camera, but everything after 1987 is going to work pretty well. In 2000, they brought out their first digital SLR, the D30, and a few years later was kind of a big hallmark, which was the first Rebel, at least digital Rebel, I should say, because there were film Rebels before that. But it was the first SLR, interchangeable lens camera, under $1,000. And that's when digital photography really started to break through the film world and really take hold. And so that was kind of the first notable digital Rebel camera. So one of the great things about being part of the Canon family is that there is a huge lineup of cameras. And with the T4i, there is models that you can move up from if you outgrow this camera. And there's even smaller cameras. There's a new EOS M camera that is a new type of camera that we're not going to get into today. But it's even smaller and lighter than this camera, but can use the same lenses. The other good reason to be with Canon is that they have a huge collection of very high quality lenses. So if you need to do something, anything, chances are that there is a lens that will work for you. They also have a very good flash system. Lots of different flash units. The camera has a built-in flash, and we'll talk about some of the settings on how to get that set up, but there are other flash units available, and I'll make some recommendations and tell you about some of the models that are available with that. Now, as far as the T4i, this is just the latest generation of what has come from the entry-level line. This is hardly an entry-level camera, but it is still kind of classified in that category. There are cameras priced lower from Canon, like the T3i, which was last year's model, also known as the 600D. And they do also have a T3, which is a little bit of a stripped-down version of the T3 that is available. And as you can see, they do have much higher-end cameras. And every about year to 18 months, they update the camera. So I fully expect at some point in the future there'll be a T5i and a 700D, and they'll just keep going up those numbers as they make incremental improvements each year. Another little tidbit, if you live in Japan, the camera is called the X6i, KISS, the KISS X6i, which clearly doesn't sound very good off of my mouth here in the United States. So if you have a previous camera, T1i, T2i, T3i, here's what's the latest, greatest thing that's new in this particular camera. Probably most notable is the touch screen. It's the first of the SLRs from the big manufacturers that has a touch-activated screen. And how big of importance is this? Well, I don't know. Do you own an iPhone or a touch-sensitive phone or other device? You might like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it at all, which is kind of a nice option. These cameras have been designed to focus from one spot to another spot very quickly for still photography. And it's been a challenge for them to focus in the movie mode. So if you're shooting a movie, having the lens focusing smoothly, we'll talk more about this. They have finally added what's called a Servo Movie Af, which allows the lens to focus continuously while it's shooting video. The camera now shoots at 5 frames a second, which is kind of a big step up from where it was at around 3.7 frames a second. And so for anyone who's shooting sports, this has suddenly got to be a pretty good sports camera. They've increased the ISO another step up to 25,000, and they've improved the standard autofocusing system by adding some more cross-type autofocus sensors with the camera. So that's kind of the highlight new features from previous cameras. But overall, it's pretty similar to the T3i and pretty similar to the T2i. And that was a little bit of a jump from the T1i. So each time they're making about a 5% change in my mind. When you do go through that instruction manual, if you happen to make it up to maybe page 10 or 12, there is all these dire warnings about care and handling of the camera. You know, don't drop it, don't get it too hot, don't get it too cold, things like that. And I take it that most people get this. Don't be stupid with the camera. But the one question that people do have is, The waterproofness, because they say it's not waterproof, don't use it underwater, okay, obviously, but what about a little bit of rain? What if I spill my drink on it? You know, how much water can it take? Well, the camera has a lot of little openings in it, and these are not sealed with gaskets. So you do have to be careful around rain, and I would not want to use this out in a rainstorm for a very long period of time. If it was raining and I owned the camera, I would be pretty quick about going out to get the shot and then coming back in and getting out of the rain, or having an umbrella or a rain cover over it. So do be careful if it gets wet. If it does get wet and stops operating, what I would do is I would open everything up, the card door, the battery door, and I would let the camera just air out. Hopefully after a little bit of time, maybe a couple of hours, the water will dry off the electronics and it will start working again. If not, you'll need to send it into Canon to have it fixed. So do be careful with that. The other little issue is that Canon says that they will not be liable for damage if you use other accessories, different lenses, flash units, batteries, things like that. I have never seen that happen, so it's not likely to happen. But I will tell you that the camera does communicate with the lens in a certain way that it can fix problems that all lenses have. And so there is a good reason for using some Canon lenses. But having said that, there are good Tokina, Tamron, Sigma lenses out there that sometimes make something either a little different or a little bit more affordable than what Canon has available. So I really don't have a problem recommending those lenses as well. There are cheap aftermarket batteries that can be okay. They can be more affordable. They don't last typically as long as the Canons. I would really stick with the Canon flashes. They are a bit more money than aftermarket ones, but they are a lot better as far as their communication with the camera, and the whole system works a lot better. And flash being as complicated as it is, I would want to make it as easy as possible. And Canon flashes will help you do that. Okay, so for those of you here in the classroom and at home, make sure that your cameras are ready for this class. So hopefully you've charged the battery. That takes about 2 hours, and you should get around 400 to 500 shots depending on how you use the camera. And hopefully you've done the basic things. We've got lenses attached. I see you got lens attached. You got the battery. You got a memory card in your camera so that we can take some practice pictures in here. And you're totally fine to take some practice pictures in here. Let's get your lens cap off because we're going to actually be using the camera right now. And so what I want you to do, oh, this just kills me to say this, but turn your camera to the A+ mode, which is the auto complete dummy mode, and just take a picture. Make sure my camera's on. I'm going to take a picture here. And my flash did fire, and yes, I got a huge glare on the screen in front of me, so I know my camera is working. Is everyone's camera working? I always like to do this to kind of just make sure, because inevitably, if I have a large class of people, somebody forgot to charge their battery, and so right now is a good time to go charge your battery while we kind of play with a few other things. All right, so before you do that, everyone turn your cameras to the M mode for manual, because that's where we're going to spend a good portion of the day.